Hi guys, Andreas on Mainliner here with another record of the day, and this time I'm going to be talking about this thread that was going around Facebook a couple of months ago. I don't remember, I don't recall. Anyway, it hasn't been that long of a time, and I was tagged by a friend with whom I had the conversation because he was talking to me about, oh yeah, you've seen that thread, and it's like, what's your top 10 albums and whatnot, and we were going back and forward, back and forward. We were discussing anyway our top 10 albums. So he tagged me eventually. So I felt obliged in a way to respond. However, the albums that I told him that were my top 10, all-time top 10, were not the albums that I put on the thread. So the albums I posted, you were supposed to post like one album every day for 10 days, so 10 albums in total. And you could say something about them or you could not say something about them. I didn't say anything about them, basically. So when we were discussing it one-on-one, I gave him a different list. But then I read the actual sort of description of what was the ask in that sort of thing, Facebook, I don't know, thread, whatever you want to call it, I don't know. And it said that, oh yeah, well, post an album that you used to listen to a lot and when a while back, and made an impression on you, and you still listen to like from time to time. So that meant that I could not put in there stuff like, I don't know, the Stooges, because I still listen to them a lot. Joy Division, which I still listen to them a lot. Black Sabbath, which I still listen to a lot. Sonic Youth, which I still listen to a lot. And you know what I mean. So there's like loads of things that I have in my top 10 that wouldn't sort of correspond to what the ask was. And I'm, maybe I'm nitpicking here a little bit, but I gave a different list. And I think that it made it a little bit different. So I put in 10 albums that I genuinely was very impressed when I first heard them. But for whatever reason, I haven't been listening to them that often. And yeah, and also I wanted to avoid, and the other reason, because there is another reason, is that I didn't want to put in standard stuff. I mean, alright, I'll put in like Joy Division. Oh yeah, fantastic. I wanted to put something that is more interesting. So 10 days, 10 albums, and I own all of them in a physical format, vinyl, all of them actually, but some of them I don't have here. So I wanted to show you these albums, but some of them I just don't. I have my physical copy back in Greece. I don't know if you follow this channel, you probably know that I have a collection that I left behind and still there. Hopefully, no, it's still there. And I've made some videos actually going through it. They're very bad. It's probably you'll be nauseous while watching them. But it's the problem of like pulling records out of shelves and filming at the same time. So it's a little bit. Anyway, yeah. So I do have them, but I don't have all of them. So it's been 4 minutes, and you probably have already skipped like a couple of times. So it's time to go on to. Oh yes, I wanted to say one more thing. Sorry. So this list is 10 albums that are genuinely sort of fall under that category, but the first 3 are actually albums that would be in any top 10 list that I would make, regardless. I mean, if it's top 10 jazz albums, for example, I wouldn't put them there because they're not jazz albums. But if it was like top 10, all time or whatever, the first 3 would be there because up until very recently, I had my first top 2 albums fixed, and now I think I found the third. So I have first three are like they would be in the list, and the first one there's yeah, I will explain. Anyway, first album. Now this is okay. This is Live Evil by Miles Davis. This is from his Electric period, and to be perfectly honest, I think that any album from his from this period from Miles Davis would do. Gartha, Dark Magus, this Live at the Fillmore East, Bitches Brew, any of these. I mean, you know, if you're serious about music and you want to explore new interesting things, and you know you want to have an interesting music collection, this is a period of Miles Davis that you definitely should have. Now, this is, as I said, is sort of my general preference is for Dark Magus, but this is very good, and I remember that my introduction to the Miles Davis Electric period was from Live in the Fillmore East, which I have on the double CD back in Greece. And then the second one that I got, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then the second one I got was this one, again on CD. And I was blown away again. And then every time that I bought one of these albums from that period, I was blown away every single time. So yeah, this is just one of them. Any of them would do, really. And yeah, there's not much I can say. By the way, this is fusion, not the Pac-Man fusion that I was talking about last time. This is proper stuff, proper fusion. Sorry, I think that this is a little bit too loud. Cool. So, carrying on. Day 9. Day 9, I made a whole video about this, and this is an album that made a huge impression on me when I first listened to it. I still love it, and I own a copy back in Greece, which is like, I don't know, 5th reissue or whatever. But this is a second reissue, well, second edition. This is post-punk from the US. This is Savage Republic and Tragic Figures, and this is a hell of an album. It has this tribal thing going on with tribal drumming, and I just love anything that has tribal drum in it. Like, you know, whether it's Fela Kuti, whether it's the Talking Heads, any band that uses this tribal rhythmic section just captures me. I mean, you know, it's my thing. I don't know, it's my thing. And yeah, you can watch the video I did. It's like it's super good, super good. Highly recommend it. Let me just check my phone so that I know that I am following. So yes, so that was day 9. Come on, phone. It's old. I need to change it. And I will use it as well because I need to show you the pictures of some albums because I don't have the physical copy here. So yeah, that was day 9. Day 8. Ooh. So day 8. Day 8 I put Parson Sound. This is a 3LP release of this album. These were originally unreleased recordings, and this was the band before Tradgrass Oxtenar, and they were. It's unbelievably potent psychedelic music, and it's unbelievable that these are recordings that were made. The band was put together in order to support a gig, a Terry Riley gig, and they just recorded this stuff and just laid around, I think, and unreleased for ages until Subliminal Sounds released it in 2003. I have the double CD back in Greece, but when I found out that it was out on triple LP, I just had to get it. This is just killer stuff, just unbelievable. So that was day 8, and day 7. Now this is an interesting one because it fits the brief, if you like. I sort of discovered this album 99, 19, yeah, thereabouts. I have a double CD of a reissue of it, but eventually I got the vinyl reissue again about a month ago or so. So yes, this is obviously Hawkwind, and this is their live album, Space Ritual, which is probably one of the best live recordings ever. And this is and not only it's like a really good album, it has a lot of things going on. First of all, it's a live album, so it's a collection of songs from because Hawkwind at the time had already released 4 albums, and they cherry pick all the best ones. The second thing is that this is Hawkwind at their peak, I think. The albums after that sort of slowed down a little bit, although Warrior at the Edge of Time is after this one, which is one of their best ones. But this is the band at its very peak. I mean, it has everything going for them, right? It has a full band. It has Lemmy. It has Miss Stacia, who's this person here, depicted here, who was like their dancer. They had a dancer, and she was like 6 foot tall or whatever, and she was like super impressive, and she danced half naked on the stage, and think of Hawkwind playing and a 6 foot woman dancing half naked on the stage. Just, yeah. Anyway, and they also had David Moorcock, who was reciting like sci-fi shit in between songs. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this. There's like bands that play space rock. This is space rock. This is super unbelievable. Now, I haven't been listening to it lately that much, although I have, because now I have the physical copy, and that gave me the impetus to sort of listen to it again. But before that, I wasn't listening to it that much. I was more into listening to the actual albums, and more specifically, Warrior at the Edge of Time. But man, this is just, yeah, because I'm very familiar with this album, very, very, very familiar, and the reissue is really good, and I got it for a really good price. It fell since it was originally released, and it's a really good pressing, and the price is really good. As I said, I got it for a very good price, and yeah, I would like to have an original, but in the UK, VG Plus just could mean anything. So, it's a bit of a risk, and if I'm going to pay like, I don't know, 35, 40 pounds, I want to make sure that it's in good condition. And, anyway, highly, 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 highly recommended. Yeah. Alright, so now we go on to day 6. Unfortunately, day 6 means that it's an album that I do not have here, and I don't have a physical copy here, but I do have a physical copy back home. So I will show you the picture, because I discovered that YouTube doesn't support putting pictures on the video, embedding pictures on the video. God knows why. Anyway, this is the album. This is Yahuwah 13, and this is sometimes referred to as The Lovers, sometimes referred to as I'm gonna take you home. And this was released in 1973, and Yahuwah 13 was a collective of musicians centered around Father Yod, who's this guy, and he was a cult leader basically, and but he was like one of the benign cult leaders, because he didn't kill anybody. The only person that died in his cult, I think, was himself. That was it, pretty much. But maybe he didn't have enough time. The other thing that was going on for him, this guy, was that he was quite rich. He had a vegetarian restaurant in the Los Angeles Strip, and everybody was going there, like actors and personalities of the time. So he had a lot of exchange with actual people, so it never sort of descended into like super cultish stuff. But the collective did have there is a documentary about them, and it's quite interesting. I think that they sort of narrowly escaped the Manson route of things. Anyway, they did make music, pretty much like the Manson family. Charles Manson did make some records, and Father Yod was involved in them. And in this one specifically, there was a Sky Saxon that was playing, so you get a very potent dose of acid rock, and it's just really, really, really good. They have quite a few albums out, and Father Yod is in all of them. Funnily enough, he's not very musical. I don't think that his contribution is, adds any value, to be honest. But this is a very good album and comes highly recommended. It hasn't been reissued since 2002. I have the Swordfish UK reissue that came out at the time, but it hasn't been reissued since, and I don't know why. It's a mystery. Probably it will happen at some point. You will see another reissue come out, and if you do pick it up. I highly recommend it. Next up, again, I don't have a physical copy right here, but I do own one of the reissues, early 1990s reissue, I don't know, something along those lines, of this album. Fela Kuti, Zombie. Probably his best one. I say probably because there is one more candidate. There is the one with Ginger Baker, which is brilliant. Now, to be fair, Fela Kuti has most of his albums are quite good. Some of them are better than others, but most of them they have a really good level of quality. And as I was saying earlier, I like the tribal Afrobeat thing happening. It just builds up and up and up and up. And Zombie is just super addictive. It just locks your brain in. It's unbelievable. And and Fela was he was a dude, man. He was the shit. Everybody else was rock stars or whatever, but Fela was the shiz, man. And this is just brilliant album. I mean, I cannot think of anybody that would not like this, honestly. Next up, Day 4. Again, an album that I don't have a physical copy here, but I do have a physical copy back in Greece. And actually, it's one of the records that I did a needle drop when I was showing my collection. It's like, oh yeah, these are my Japanese stuff, and here's one that I really, really like. And I did a needle drop, and it's this one. It's High Rise Live. It came out Squealer Records in 98, 99 or thereabouts. And High Rise is Japanese, what kind of psychedelic rock band. Basically, it's drum, bass, and guitar, and it just, you get a song, song starts, you hear a little bit of Japanese, and then it goes into wah shredding hell for 10 minutes, in songs like Popsicle. And this is an album that you can find fairly cheap, I mean the originals that were released from Squealer, you can find them for a very decent price, and they're all worth it. They are just amazing. They're probably the best Japanese band. I know that as Mother Temple gets gets noticed, but this is the shit, man. This is the good stuff. This is I don't know. This it's close to my heart. It's like it has that wah madness thing going on that just I cannot say no. Now, top 3. So last 3 days, well, the first 3 days in reality, because I went the other way around. These are albums that would be in the top 10 regardless of, you know, if it's current or it's, you know, 10 years ago, whatever. So yeah, these albums are very close to my heart. I've listened to them a lot, and they are, I don't know, I have a connection with them for one reason or another. This one is an odd one. So this is, oh, you cannot see it. This is Lurker of Chalice. This is a project from Rest, who is also known as Leviathan. And I've talked about this album before. I have an original Southern Lord release of this back in Greece, which I bought at the time, 2005. But it got reissued, and supposedly it's a little bit, there's a bit of remastering happening here, and I just wanted to have another physical copy because this is one of my favorite albums of all time. So there you go. So yes, it is metal. It is black metal. It's atmospheric black metal. But one of the reasons why it's one of my favorite albums of all time is that it's non-standard in many ways. So song for song is not the same. There is a lot of variance. It doesn't rely on the standard sort of black metal texture going on. It has actual songwriting that changes from song to song, and it feels very special. And I know that there was an interview from Rest did an interview about this, and he was asked if he has more material. Apparently he has more material, but he doesn't want to release it. And also he said that he would not make another Lurker of Chalice album because at the time he had a muse, and that muse is gone now. And yes, it is black metal. It is very atmospheric, so it has a lot of slow parts, and it does feel like he was influenced by, you know, certain presence, I would say. I mean, do you know a lot of black metal albums that somebody recites Sylvia Plath? Because in this one it does. He does. Well, not he. There is a lady that actually does that, and I think that probably that was the muse. And yeah, and it's really good. So it's dark. It is dark, but it's very well made. I mean, from the get-go, you start off with the Piercing Where They Might, which is the first song, and it has this guitar riff that feels like it's like waves upon waves upon waves, and then there is Granite, where there is like this sort of epic singing voice, and then the song that has the Sylvia Plath recitation, Blood Falls as Mortal 3, which is a really long song. It's like 15, 17 minutes or something, and has all these parts and the structure, and it evolves, and it's super interesting, super good. So if you're a little bit adventurous, I cannot but highly recommend checking this one out. Obviously, you know, if you have, you know, get blisters when you listen to anything more than, I don't know, Nirvana, then yeah, well, you know, it's your loss. Right, number two is this one, Kim Fowley, Outrageous. This is I think it's the Canadian copy, original Canadian, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, so basically, what can I say about this album? This is madness. This is madness in 12 inches of vinyl. You know, I think I've said this before, but there are albums that, you know, people say, oh, you know, this album sort of represents the 60s and the spirit and la la la, and, you know, they usually would say something along the lines of, like, I don't know, the Beatles, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, or, you know, the times are changing, or, I don't know, something along those lines anyway. But to me, this is the 60s. This is what I have in my mind about the 60s in the US, and I'm not talking about, you know, British invasion. I'm talking more about, you know, the homegrown stuff. And this is how I sort of visualize it. It's a bit of madness. So you have Kim Fowley, who is a little bit like he actually reminds me of Klaus Kinski. He's like Klaus Kinskian sort of personality in this album. He throws out all this weirdness. He's backed by a really solid garage band that play amazingly well, and they sort of get what he's doing, and it's yeah, I mean, it's like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, but in a musical album version of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. It has like all the psychedelic madness and all the freakouts, everything. And it's one of the albums that I like to listen to start to finish. And if I start it, I will finish it because it's a trip. You have to do it, and that's the only way that you can really appreciate this album, in my humble opinion. And yeah, this is just from a historical perspective, although historically it's not appreciated as much, I think. But I think it captures that 60s free sort of thinking spirit and, like, you know, anti-establishment thing happening, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun, and it's really, really good. Super highly recommended. And finally, an album that when I first listened to, it blew my mind away, and it was my #1 top album of all time for a while. This is none other than Rainbows. Whoa, this is the deluxe edition of Rainbows. Oops, there you go. The deluxe edition. So yeah, when it first came out, I listened to it and it was like, my God, this is what rock music should be in the 21st century. It felt like it was modern. It was well made, well put together, well constructed, but at the same time, the effort that was put into making the album did not supersede the actual content of the album. The album would have been good no matter what, because they had really good songs and it was just so well made. But it no longer is my top album, and the reason why it's not my #1 anymore is that it has been superseded by A Moon-Shaped Pool, which is this, but in CinemaScope and 3D and like with that Dolby Atmos system and I don't know, whatever, you know. It's this now, without taking anything away from this, because it's a fucking good album and a good album is a good album, I think it's just an evolution, you know, and the Moon-Shaped Pool is a level up. That's all it is. So, from one respect, I did keep up with, you know, what was requested originally, like, you know, something that I still listen to every now and again, and I do listen to this every now and again. But my #1 would be Moonshaped Pool. So yeah, that's my top 10. You know, list of albums that I put together just as a thought experiment, really, to see, you know, what would I put in there. And it's always interesting to think about, you know, your top 10 albums, because they always change. They always change. It's always moving. But I think that I have sort of nailed the first three. So if you ask me now, my top 10 list, yeah, number one is Moonshaped Pool. In Rainbows is no longer number one, but it's sort of an evolution of it. Kim Fowley, Outrageous, and Lurker of Chalice, number three. Everything else, you know, it might change. Probably will. Probably will again in the future. Anyway, that's it. I hope you enjoyed. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe you've done a list of your own. Maybe you've done the same thing as I did. And yeah, you know, as per usual, you can like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you disliked it. Subscribe to this channel if you want to see more videos like this whenever I feel like uploading one, or yeah, unsubscribe or do whatever you want to do anyway. And I will see you around.